Welcome back to the deep dive, and welcome to Research Bites.
Your quick way to chew over big ideas in education research.
Exactly, small bites of big evidence. We want to give you practical tools, things you can use straight away, especially thinking about our listeners, teachers and leaders in Bangladesh.
And today's bite is a big one, but maybe the most powerful, low-cost tool we have: metacognition and self-regulated learning.
Right. And that low-cost aspect is crucial, isn't it? Especially for teachers who might be managing really large classes, maybe limited budgets. That's our context here.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to, cut through the jargon. We want to pull out the core ideas and make them really practical, classroom ready. The research points to this being high impact, very low cost. We're talking potentially, 7 months of extra progress for students?
That's a figure, yeah.
Yeah.
Up to 7 months. And it's particularly effective for disadvantaged learners. It's a huge potential gain.
You just can't ignore that. So how do we get there? What's the basic idea?
Well, at its heart, it's pretty simple. Metacognition is often called thinking about thinking, or maybe learning to learn.
Okay.
It's basically how students monitor what they're doing, how they direct their own learning, and crucially, how they review it afterwards. It's like their internal guide.
An internal guide. I like that. So let's unpack that guide system. If it can lead to such big gains, what are its sort of moving parts? The research talks about self-regulated learning having 3 pillars.
That's right, 3 pillars, and they have to work together. You can't really have one without the others. First up is cognition.
Cognition, okay.
This is the actual stuff, the knowledge, the skills, knowing the formula in maths, or maybe using a mnemonic, a memory trick for vocabulary in English. It's the what you're learning.
Right, the facts, the procedures, the basic tools.
Exactly. Then the second pillar is metacognition. This is the manager. If cognition is the tools, metacognition is deciding which tool to use, checking if it's actually working, and knowing when to switch tools if it's not.
Ah, okay. So it's not just having the tool, but knowing how and when to use it effectively, like checking if that memory trick is actually helping you remember the words.
Precisely. And maybe deciding, this isn't working, let's try flashcards instead. That's metacognition in action.
Got it. Cognition is the doing, metacognition is the directing and judging. What's the third pillar?
Motivation. This is the engine, really. The willingness to actually use the tools and strategies, and the perseverance to stick with it when things get tricky.
Ah, yeah. You can have the best tools and the best plan, but if you're not motivated.
They just sit there. Exactly. And they all interact. High motivation with no strategies, that won't work. Great strategies, but no metacognitive checking. You might just be spinning your wheels doing the wrong thing efficiently.
That makes the interaction really clear. So you need the system, but what kind of information does the system need to actually, work well?
Good question. That's where metacognitive knowledge comes in. Effective learners tend to know 3 things when they approach a task.
Okay, what are they?
First, knowledge of themselves, their own strengths, their weaknesses, maybe how they feel about the subject. Second, knowledge of strategies. What techniques generally work for them? What have they tried before?
Right. And third?
Knowledge of the task itself. What kind of activity is this? How hard is it likely to be? What does success look like for this specific task?
So knowing yourself, knowing your tools, and knowing the job. That makes sense. But I've heard this idea that metacognition is just a general thinking skill. Is that right? Can we teach it separately?
That's a really important point and a common misconception. The research is quite clear. Metacognition isn't some generic skill floating free. It's highly task-specific.
Meaning
You get good at metacognition in history by doing history and thinking about how you learn history. You can't be good at monitoring your learning in physics if you don't know much physics to begin with.
Okay, so strong subject knowledge is the foundation for strong metacognition in that subject. We're embedding this within our subjects, not adding a separate thinking lesson.
Exactly. It's about teaching how to learn science while teaching science content.
Right. But that brings us back to the practical challenge. How do we foster this in, say, a class of 50 students? We can't be everywhere, checking in constantly.
No, you can't. And that's where the core mechanism comes in.
Yeah.
The plan, monitor, evaluate cycle. PME. This is the practical framework.
Plan, monitor, evaluate.
Okay, and the most powerful resource-light way to develop this in students is through teacher questioning and modeling. Use your voice, your expertise to guide them through it.
Dialogue instead of worksheets. I like that. It leverages the teacher, which is always the best resource. So how do we use questions to guide that PME cycle? Let's start with planning.
Okay, planning. This happens before the task starts. You need to get them thinking ahead, activating that metacognitive knowledge we talked about.
So what kind of questions? Give us some examples.
You model it first, then ask things like, okay, look at this problem. Have you seen one like this before? What did you do then? Or what strategies could you use here? And maybe the most important one, what parts might be tricky? And what's your plan for if you get stuck?
The if I get stuck plan. That sounds key for building resilience, stopping that panic moment.
It is. It gives them a pre-planned route when they hit difficulty. Okay, then during the task, we shift to monitoring.
Checking in while they're working. How do we do that efficiently in a large class?
You can't monitor everyone all the time, so the questions need to prompt self-monitoring. Maybe pause the class after 10 minutes or after a specific step. Ask. Just stop for a moment. Is the strategy you chose actually working? How do you know?
Okay.
Or think back to your plan. Are you sticking to it? Are you managing your time? You're essentially asking them to run the check themselves.
Making them pause and reflect mid-task. And then the final stage, evaluating. This is after the task is done.
Yes. And this is crucial for learning from the experience. You know that student who finishes fast and claims they got it all right, but maybe they guessed half of it. Evaluation forces them to look at the process, not just the result.
How do we guide that? What questions work here?
You want to connect the strategy to the outcome. So how well did that strategy work for you? What makes you say that? Thinking about how it went, what would you do differently next time you see this kind of problem?
Right. Learning for the future.
Exactly. And maybe a broader one. What did you learn about yourself as a learner today by doing this task? That helps build that self-knowledge piece.
That PME questioning cycle seems like a really practical, low-resource framework. Now let's talk about making it stick. What are the sort of active ingredients, the teacher habits that make this really work?
Okay, the research points to a few key things. Let's call them non-negotiables. First, and this underpins everything, is explicitly teaching strategies.
Explicitly, meaning?
Meaning, you can't just hope students pick up planning skills or know how to monitor. You have to teach the PME cycle itself and specific strategies for your subject directly. Spell it out. This is especially important for disadvantaged students who might not get this kind of guidance elsewhere.
So, don't assume, teach it. Got it. What's the second key ingredient?
This one is about the teacher's own process. Modeling your thinking. Using a think aloud.
Ah, the think aloud. So talking through your own thought process as you tackle a problem.
Precisely. You make your internal monologue visible. You verbalize the decisions, the uncertainties, the checks you're making as an expert learner. Okay, what do I know about this topic already? I remember we learned X. Does that apply here? Let me try this approach first.
But does that take up a lot of time? How do we make sure it's efficient?
It's an investment. That minute you spend modeling how you think can save students 15 minutes of confusion later.
Yeah.
They often only see the neat final answer. They don't see the messy thinking that got you there. Modeling bridges that gap. It gives them a blueprint.
Makes the invisible visible. Okay, I see the value. What's the third ingredient?
Promoting metacognitive talk in the classroom. Using dialogue purposefully.
So getting students talking to each other or with the teacher about their thinking.
Yes, but it needs to be structured. Not just chat, but focused talk. Think talk partners, discussing why they chose a certain strategy, or small group debates about the best way to approach a task, or even Socratic questioning from the teacher that pushes them to justify their thinking.
Using talk to build understanding and challenge strategies. Okay. Now, for teachers in large classes, a constant battle is keeping students focused. There's so much going on. This relates to cognitive load, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the next recommendation. Managing cognitive load. You have to set tasks at the right level to challenge the Goldilocks level, not too hard, not too easy.
Why is that so critical for metacognition?
Because if a task is overwhelmingly complex, the student's working memory gets swamped. They go into cognitive overload. When that happens, there's just no mental space left for metacognition, for planning, or monitoring. They're just trying to survive.
So too much load shuts down the higher order thinking. How do we help them manage it?
We need to teach them strategies. Things like breaking down a complex task into smaller, manageable steps, or using external aids like encouraging notes, diagrams, checklists to offload some of the thinking onto paper.
Right, freeing up mental space.
And always, always activate prior knowledge before introducing something new. Connecting new ideas to what they already know makes it much easier to process, reducing that cognitive load.
Explicit teaching, modeling, talk, and managing cognitive load, those feel like really core teaching practices, not necessarily extra things to do.
Exactly. They should be woven into how we teach already. Which leads us nicely to a structure that helps do just that, the 7-step lesson framework.
Okay, tell us about this framework. How does it help deliver metacognition?
It's basically a scaffolding model. It's designed to explicitly teach metacognitive strategies and, really importantly, to deliberately shift the responsibility for using those strategies from the teacher over to the student.
A gradual release of responsibility.
That's the idea. It can be used over a single lesson or stretch across a few, but the sequence is key.
Okay, let's walk through the steps. Where does the teacher start?
Right. Steps 1 to 4 are mostly teacher-led, focusing on building that initial knowledge and strategy awareness. Step 1, activating prior knowledge. Quick questions, reminding them what they already know that's relevant.
Setting the stage. Step 2.
Explicit strategy instruction. This is where you clearly explain the task steps, the potential strategies they could use, maybe even talk about managing frustration if it gets hard.
Being upfront about the process and the potential challenges. Okay.
Step 3.
That's the modeling, the think aloud we talked about. The teacher demonstrates the strategy, verbalizing their thinking.
Showing, not just telling. And step 4.
Memorization of strategy, a quick check. Can they recall the steps you just showed them? Why are we using this strategy? Maybe have them tell a partner or jot down the key steps, just making sure it's lodged in their working memory before they try it.
Okay, teacher sets it up, explains it, models it, checks they remember it. Now the handover starts.
Yes, step 5 is guided practice. This is crucial. Students start practicing the strategy, but with support. The teacher provides prompts, scaffolds, maybe works through one together, but the key is gradually removing that support. Less help with each attempt.
Letting them try, but being there as a safety net, then slowly pulling the net away. Okay, what's step 6?
Independent practice. This is the goal. Students apply this strategy entirely on their own. No teacher help, no peer help at this stage. It's their chance to really try it out independently.
The real test. And that leads to the final step.
Step 7, structured reflection. This closes the loop, feeding back into the PME cycle. After they've practiced independently, you guide them to think about how it went.
This sounds like the evaluation part of PME we discussed earlier.
Exactly. You ask them to consider, how effective was the strategy? Did method A work better than method B? What would they change next time? And importantly, for large classes, this doesn't need to be a long essay.
Right. How can we make it quick but meaningful?
It could be just one focused sentence written down, or a 30-second turn and talk with a partner. What worked well for you? What would you do differently? The point is to get them consciously judging their process and planning for the future. It makes the learning stick and improves their planning for the next time they face a similar task.
So that 7-step framework provides a really clear pathway, from explicit teaching right through to independent use and reflection. It seems like a powerful way to embed all these ideas.
It really is. It makes the teaching of these crucial learning skills deliberate and structured.
This has been fascinating. It really drives home that metacognition and self-regulated learning aren't just, educational buzzwords. They're about powerful, practical teaching.
Absolutely. It's not an add-on. It's fundamental to effective teaching, helping students become aware of themselves, the strategies they can use, and the tasks they face. And crucially, it relies on the teacher's skill in guiding and questioning.
Using that targeted dialogue we talked about.
Exactly. We know from research that students often overestimate how well they've learned something, especially after cramming. They feel confident, but it might be false confidence.
Right.
So if explicit teaching and metacognitive strategies can help address that overconfidence, perhaps the final thought for you listening is this. How can you use that structured reflection, step 7 in the framework, perhaps next week? How can you use it to help your students judge their own learning progress more accurately, building real confidence based on real understanding, not just hope?
That's a great challenge to leave us with. How do we help students become accurate judges of their own learning? Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.